Hello everyone and welcome back to the EL112 coursebook. In this video we're going to be going over the last part of Unit 3, Unit 3C, and we're going to be talking about cross-cultural theories. Alright, so before we start, I'd like you guys to take a look at the iceberg here, and upon first glance, what do you think this is going to be talking about? Alright, so I'll continue as if you've gotten a general idea. Generally, we use the iceberg to give us an indication of the things that are known and then the things deeper that are not so well known. Because if you guys didn't know, an iceberg, basically the tip of the iceberg is the part that is seen, while most of the iceberg is actually underwater. So people use that model to talk about different things, perhaps some stuff that are well known and some stuff that are not so known. Could be about a person's life, could be about culture, as in the way it's used in this lesson here. So the first part will probably talk about the stuff that we know and we expect, and then as we dive deeper, quote unquote, underwater, you'll notice different things like core values and attitudes and things like that. We'll definitely understand more as we go through the audios in this lesson. Okay, so now let's go to exercise 1. We're going to be listening to a part of a lecture. Again, he's going to be talking about cultural theories. So we have fill in the blanks here, but first of all, this is quite long and we do have quite a bit of audios here. So if you need to listen more than once, it would not be realistic for me to play this a lot because it would take a very long time and it's just not a good time. So if you need to listen more than once, just rewind the video, okay? This is already almost 4 minutes. So I'll play this, take out a pen and paper and try to answer these questions along. And if you need to hear it once more, just rewind the video. Okay, here we go.
This week's lecture is the first on a very broad topic, cultural differences and how to deal with them. Today, I'll be giving you an overview of some of the key theories about cultural differences and intercultural communication. In subsequent lectures, we shall examine these in more detail. I looked at the class register earlier today, and I can see that you are a pretty culturally diverse group. So I expect that you have already noticed differences in behaviour between people here, people in your own culture, and your classmates from other countries. This slide shows what is known as the iceberg model of culture. As you probably know, 90% of an iceberg is below the surface of the sea, and so cannot be seen. This analogy is commonly used to describe culture, because the majority of what constitutes culture is below the surface. In other words, unseen, and often subconscious and taken for granted. The 10% that is visible is behaviour. The way that people dress, what and when they eat, their dances and literature and traditional celebrations, and so on. Below the surface, here at the bottom of the iceberg, are the core values of a culture, the things that are widely considered to be good or bad, right or wrong, acceptable or unacceptable. These core cultural values have been shaped by the history, religion, and political background of a specific country or culture, and are passed on by education, the family, and the media. Slightly higher up the iceberg, we have attitudes that grow out of these core values. These could be attitudes to gender roles, care of the elderly, work versus family, punctuality, showing affection in public, a host of different things. For example, if a core value of your culture is respect for your elders, this could result in an attitude in which young people put the needs of older generations before their own. This, in turn, could result in behavior such as giving up a career to care for an aging relative at home, or following a career you do not really like in order to please a parent. As I said before, this analogy is frequently used in the field of cross-cultural studies and is now so widely accepted that there is disagreement about when it was first formulated and who actually originated the model. The general consensus is that it was most probably Edward T. Hall, about whom you will hear more later in this lecture.
Okay, so that was our first audio. If you guys notice, the lecturer talked about the iceberg model of culture before answering any of these questions here. So let's take a look together at the iceberg model of culture. The 10% that we can normally see is called, what do you guys think? That's correct. It was called behavior. So things like, I'm not sure why. Okay. Behavior, the things that, that you can usually see right away in a culture. Basically, the way people dress, their food, if they have specific ways of dancing, literature, and also traditional celebrations. Okay, so all of these fall under the 10% category of behavior in the iceberg model. Okay, now the lecturer went all the way to the bottom first, where he talked about core values. So we basically did a whole 180. So we went from all the way up to all the way down. So all the way down in the iceberg model would be called the core values, and these are things that people believe in culture. So for example, what is right, what is wrong, what is good, what is bad, your moral standing as a person. So these are all things that are quite hidden. You don't notice these right away. You might hear rumors about them, but you don't know for certain. Okay? Then afterwards, if you guys heard, the lecturer moved to somewhere in between where he talked about the attitudes. And think of the attitudes as basically the middle of the iceberg. Not high up, not all the way down. And attitudes include things like gender roles, care for the elderly. He also said work versus family, punctuality. You might notice that specific cultures have very strong punctuality. They have to be on time. It's a big deal to them. Other cultures put a great deal of respect for families, so they might even go against what they want just to please their families. That's a big part. In some cultures, work is so prominent that it causes issues, but it's all a part of the attitudes part of the culture. Okay? So this is our iceberg model. We have behavior, attitudes, and core values with their own descriptions. All right. Now let's go to the questions. Who is the originator of this model? If you guys remember in the audio, it was said that it has been changed multiple times, but one of the first people to introduce this was actually a gentleman called Edward T. Hall. Okay? And then in his commentary, the lecturer, is he positive, negative, or neutral about this model? What do you guys think? I think this one is pretty easy. I mean, there wasn't any favoritism and there wasn't any negative talk. So I would say neutral is the word we're looking for. Okay, let's check our answers. Here you guys go. Okay. 2, let's think about this model for a second. What do you think about this model? In what ways could it help you understand another person and their culture? Well, like we said before, if we look at this model, it gives us a very good idea of how a culture operates and how people of said culture go about doing things. And then by comparing it to your own culture, you get a general idea of how to act around that person, how to not be offensive towards them, perhaps understand them better, and then also telling them that maybe perhaps, oh, like you do things this way, I do things that way, not hating, but it's just difference. So I feel like it helps people get closer because they understand each other better. All right. Let's go to the third exercise. What do we have here? Now we have the second part of the lecture, and the lecturer talks about a key researcher in this field. Okay, so one of the researchers is going to be in this book list right here. His name is going to be here somewhere. Okay, so be on the lookout for that. Also, we have a few questions here, and what I would like you to do is listen to the lecture carefully because this is quite long. This is almost 5 minutes. So listen to these and answer the questions as you go. If you need to listen more than once, like I said before, just rewind the video. Okay? So do it, and then we'll check our answers together. All right, here we go.
So, bearing in mind that what lies below the surface in the iceberg model is not only unseen, but also often subconscious and taken for granted, much of the research in cross-cultural issues is based on the idea that understanding your own and other people's unexpressed values and attitudes, the submerged section of the iceberg, will pave the way to better comprehension and hence to improved interactions between people from different cultural backgrounds. The most prolific researcher in this field is the Dutch professor Geert Hofstede, who carried out his first survey of cultural values while working for the multinational company IBM in the period 1967 to 1973. His data covered employees of IBM working in 70 different countries. Though the original analysis he developed and published as Culture's Consequences, International Differences in Work-Related Values, covered only the 40 largest of these countries. He has since carried out several other studies, the most recent being in 2013, and listing data for 76 different countries. Hofstede's model originally covered 4 dimensions of culture as it manifests in the workplace, and the countries he surveyed were mapped onto these dimensions depending on how high or low they scored for each. He named the first of these dimensions power distance. Power distance refers to the degree to which the less powerful members of organizations within a country accept that power is not distributed equally. To put this in other words, in a country with a high power distance score, people accept that everyone has a place in society and that there is a hierarchy. Subordinates expect their bosses to tell them what to do, and centralization of power is normal. In contrast, countries that score low on this dimension put stress on equal opportunities for everybody, and employees expect their bosses to consult with them before taking a decision. Saudi Arabia is an example of a country that scores very high on the power distance dimension, while Denmark scores very low. Next, we have original dimensions. He later added 2 others, but we shall look at those next week. I must point out that a number of criticisms have been voiced about his work. One of these is that it assumes that national borders and cultural borders are always the same, which is not, of course, the case. Another is that, being originally based on questionnaires, completed mainly by male engineers, it is not representative of all groups in society. Nevertheless, his work was groundbreaking, and many subsequent researchers have validated his original findings and expanded upon them.
Okay, so that was a very interesting audio. A lot of things that I personally did not know. Let's go to A and answer some of these questions together. Which of the authors on the reading list is this part of the lecture about? If you guys remember, the name of the author was, he's Dutch, so his name is pronounced as Hofstede. I don't know his first name, and I'm not going to try to write it down. So it's also here if you guys need to know more. So Hofstede. And then B, which part of the iceberg does his research focus on? His main research was focused on the submerged part of the iceberg. That is the part that is underwater. Okay? For C, where and when did he first conduct his research? If you guys remember, he used to work at IBM. So we'll say IBM from 1967 to 1973. Okay, and then D, how many countries does his most recent research cover? Okay, so he had previous research that was at around 70 countries, but his newer research was 76 countries. Okay. What does he mean by power distance? Power distance is when people believe there is a hierarchy, if I remember correctly. So when people make peace with the fact that power is not distributed equally, and then he made an example between Saudi Arabia having a really high power distance and Denmark having a really low power distance. So we'll say power distance basically means power that is not distributed equally. Okay? And finally, in his commentary, is the lecturer positive, negative, or neutral about this researcher's theories? I would say he was pretty positive because he did say that his discoveries, or Hofstede's discoveries, were groundbreaking, and you wouldn't really talk about someone that in a negative way and say his research was groundbreaking. So we'll say positive. Okay, so these were the answers. Let's go to the next page. Okay, again, we're still on the same lecture. Now we're going to be listening to another part at a later time of the same lecture. And again, we have some more questions that we need to answer. Focus on the audio one more time. Keep your pen and paper ready and answer these as you go. All right, here we go.
Another early researcher in the field was Edward T. Hall, an American anthropologist whose interest in cross-cultural issues began when he was hired to train American diplomats in the 1950s. Hall's approach differed from Hofstede's in that he didn't seek to analyze underlying values, but instead looked at differences in how cultures behaved and communicated, and the underlying attitudes that caused their behavior. Hall pioneered the study of proxemics. That is, how the physical closeness of people is shaped by culture. He was also the originator of important theories of communication styles, which we shall look at next week. Today, I shall briefly introduce Hall's theory of time, which he published in his 1983 book, The Dance of Life, The Other Dimension of Time. Hall observed that cultures structured and perceived time differently, and that this led to different behaviors. In monochronic societies, time is considered as a commodity that must be used well. To do this, monochronic societies assign tasks to specific times and like to complete one task before moving on to the next. Polychronic societies, in contrast, see time as flexible and unlimited. These societies are happy with a large number of tasks being carried out simultaneously. These fundamental differences in attitude result in behavior that can irritate others. For example, a person from a monochronic culture will be upset by a polychronic person's lack of punctuality. A person from a polychronic society may be surprised or irritated by a monochronic person's insistence on taking their lunch break at a specific time, because that is the time they always take their lunch. As with Hofstede, the work of Hall has been extremely influential and has led to many practical applications in the area of communication skills training for people working in international business and diplomacy. His original theories have been confirmed by subsequent research and have been developed and adapted by other theorists, most notably Lewis, who...
Okay, so this is a very interesting lecture so far. Now that we've listened to this part of the audio, I hope you guys were able to get these answers. Let's go to number A. Which of the authors on the reading list is this part of the lecture about? This part of the lecture was about a gentleman called Edward T. Hall. Okay? And then B, which part of the iceberg does his research focus on? Compared to the other audio, this one actually focuses on behavior. Let me write that correctly. And if you guys remember, behavior is the part that is above water, so the 10% that you can see. I'm not sure why this is... Okay, we're good. Where and when did he first become interested in cross-cultural issues? He became interested when he was hired to train American diplomats. And this was somewhere in the 1950s. Okay, so where and when did he first become interested in cross-cultural issues? When he was hired to train diplomats in the 1950s. What does he mean by monochronic time? So in a monochronic society, we'll say, we want to say this as a definition. So we'll say time is considered a commodity and must be used well. Basically, what this means is time is very special in a monochronic society and it must be used well. Okay? And what does he mean by polychronic? Well, to put it simply, polychronic is the opposite of monochronic. And in a polychronic society, time is viewed as something that is flexible and unlimited. So you can see how if two people, one monochronic, one polychronic, or each of them from different societies, you can see how that causes issues, and that could be brought back to cultural differences. One of them is very punctual and likes to do things at very specific times, and I'm actually like this, by the way. I would consider myself a monochronic person for sure. And then you have other people that tend to be a lot more flexible, and oh, if I'm late, so what? We can just take longer. Perhaps their break is at a different time each day. Today I took my break at 1 p.m. Tomorrow I'm taking it at 2 p.m. That's completely fine. While for someone that is monochronic, they prefer to have structure with their time. So you can see how that could cause issues and clashing. Okay, now let's go to E. Which, if any, of his books does the lecturer refer to? The lecturer actually refers to his book that is called The Dance of Life, the Other Dimension of Time. I really like that name. So, The Dance of Life and the Other Dimension of Time. And finally, in this commentary, is the lecturer, again, positive, negative, or neutral about this researcher's theories? I would say, just like the previous one, he seemed pretty positive. Okay, so these were the answers to this part of our lecture. Here you guys go. Now, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be going to exercise 6, and what we have here is we're going to be listening to some extracts from the lecture, so basically different parts of that same lecture, but we want to complete what the lecturer says and to fill in these blanks here. So we have A, B, and C, but each one of them has multiple fill in the blanks. Again, listen to this, and as you're going along, try to complete the fill in the blanks. All right, here we go.
A. As I said before, this analogy is frequently used in the field of cross-cultural studies and is now so widely accepted that there is disagreement about when it was first formulated and who actually originated the model. The general consensus is that it was most probably Edward T. Hall, about whom you will hear more later in this lecture. B. I must point out that a number of criticisms have been voiced about his work. One of these is that it assumes that national borders and cultural borders are always the same, which is not, of course, the case. Another is that, being originally based on questionnaires, completed mainly by male engineers, it is not representative of all groups in society. Nevertheless, his work was groundbreaking, and many subsequent researchers have validated his original findings and expanded upon them. C. As with Hofstede, the work of Hall has been extremely influential and has led to many practical applications in the area of communication skills training for people working in international business and diplomacy. His original theories have been confirmed by subsequent research and have been developed and adapted by other theorists, most notably Lewis, who...
Okay, so now that we've listened to some extracts from the lecture, let's go over these one by one. So for A, it says, this analogy is frequently used and is now so widely, if you guys listened, he said accepted, and is now so widely accepted that there is disagreement about when it was first when it was first formulated, and who actually dashed the model. We'll say who actually originated the model. Right, so we have accepted, formulated, and originated for A. Let's go to B. I must point out that a number of dash have been voiced about his work. This would be criticisms have been voiced about his work. One of these is that it dash, that national borders and cultural borders, okay, are always the same. One of these is that it assumes that national borders and cultural borders are always the same, which is not, of course, the case. Another is that being originally based on questionnaires completed mainly by male engineers, it is dash of all groups in society. We'll say it is not representative of all groups in society. Nevertheless, his work was dash. We could say his work was groundbreaking. This is a positive thing, by the way. The one above it was negative, and we'll explain this a little bit later. His work was groundbreaking, and many subsequent researchers have have validated his original findings and them expanded upon them. Okay, did further research, basically. All right, let's go to C. As with Hofstede, the work of Hall has been extremely influential. Influential and has led to many practical applications in the area of communication skills, training for people working in international business and diplomacy. His original theories have been confirmed by subsequent research and have been dashed by other theorists, have been developed and adapted by other theories. Okay, so these were the missing words from the extracts that we just listened to. Accepted, formulated, originated. Criticisms, assumes, not representative, groundbreaking, validated, expanded upon, influential, confirmed, developed, and adapted. Okay? Now that we've gotten exercise 6 out of the way, let's go to the next page. Okay. Here are some words. Before we actually go to exercise 7, I'd like to take a look at some of the expressions and words in the focus here. Understanding commentary and lectures. So lecturers usually give the following information about their subject. So there's different kinds of information and different ways to talk about certain things. We're going to be focusing on commentary and lectures for this part. You'll notice in the beginning when we listen to the lecture that the following information was given. For example, things were like, where did the ideas come from? You could hear the lecturer say, when talking about researchers, he said he formulated the theory of, and then went on. She originated the model of, and then went on. She pioneered the concept of, and then went on. All of these are neutral. You're not saying someone did something good, something bad. All they did was formulated or originated or pioneered something. So these are expressions to present the ideas or how they came about. Okay? And then afterwards, we heard the lecturer talk about the work and how important it was, and then who took it further and expanded upon that. So if I say something like, his work was groundbreaking, innovative, her ideas have been very influential, others have developed / expanded upon or adapted her theories. All of these are words that we use to describe the importance of that person's discovery or work. And then we also talk about the people that took that research one step further. So you could say developed or expanded upon or even adapted the research or theories. And this tends to be positive, okay? So when I say his discoveries were groundbreaking, I'm talking positively about that person. His ideas were very innovative, again, positive. He's been a very influential person in my life. Again, I'm talking positively. I wouldn't say someone's research is groundbreaking if I'm talking about them negatively. Okay? Finally, how others have reacted to the work. Normally, we heard the lecturer talk in a negative tone when mentioning others that have reacted to the work. So, for example, if he said his theory is highly controversial, controversial means not a lot of people accept it. It causes a lot of controversy. So, that is something that is in a negative tone. However, if I said that his theory is widely accepted, that is positive. Okay? Another one could be some criticisms or objections have been voiced about, and then they keep going. Again, if I'm criticizing you and I'm showing objections, then that is a negative tone, okay? It's not something that is positive. One object is that the researcher that, and then you keep going. Again, these are ways to express or show how others reacted to that person's research or theories. Some critics say the work is or is not representative of, depending on what was being said afterwards. Subsequent researchers have validated or confirmed her findings. Okay? So these were some of the expressions that you'd normally hear in lectures if you're talking about a person or an idea. You'd first get to know the general idea and where it came from first, and then how important it was and if anyone else took it further. And finally, some controversies, or if it was widely accepted, basically how others reacted to said research or theories. Okay, great. So now that we have a very good idea of the expressions, let's go back to exercise 7. And what I would like us to do here is we have some words and we want to put these words in what I would assume is positive commentary, negative commentary, and neutral commentary. So how are we going to go about this? I want you to think of the words that you would use if you were talking about someone positively, the words you would use from the table that you would use if you were talking about someone in a negative manner, and the words that you would use if you were simply neutral about what is going on. Okay? So let's start with the positive commentary. Again, I would prefer if you pause the video and do these before you move any further and then check your answers with me. So for positive commentary, I will say the word accepted works positively. His theories were accepted. Influential, like we said before. The word confirmed, his theories were later confirmed. The word, let's see, the word validated also works. If you guys remember, groundbreaking is a positive commentary word as well. And also, let's see, developed. If I said they were the first developers of the plane or the airplane, that is a positive commentary. Now, let's go to the neutral commentary first. We'll leave the negative for last. For neutral commentary, I would use expanded upon is two words that I could use to, I'm simply neutral and saying that other researchers expanded upon the research. Something like originated. This is me being neutral. So it was originated back in the 1950s by This is neutral as well. Similar to originated, you could say the word formulated, which is again neutral. Okay? And for these words, I think you guys have a very good idea of where we're going to put these. Let's go to the negative commentary. Let's start with assumes. So the word assumes, he assumed that this happened, yada, 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 and then it was probably something else. Or they assumed something and it was not. So negative commentary, we have assumes. And then we have adapted. not representative, if you guys remember, not representative, perhaps like the example we saw earlier, which was that the surveys or the questions were answered by male engineers, which is not representative of society as a whole. So again, that is a negative. And finally, criticisms. I think this one is pretty self-explanatory. If I'm criticizing you, even if it's constructive, it is still me talking in a negative way, so negative commentary. Okay, so this was positive commentary, negative commentary, and neutral commentary. Oh, actually, let's adapted is actually not negative commentary. I stand corrected. It is neutral. So assumes, not representative, and criticisms. Adapted makes more sense when it in neutral. If I said the theory has then been adapted, it makes a lot more sense now. So excuse me for that mistake. So this was exercise 7, and this concludes the final part of Unit 3. I hope you guys had a good time. I know this was quite a bit of listening in this unit. I hope you learned something new, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.